Today we're going to be talking about all of the books that I read in July. First up we have The Court of Miracles by Kester Grant, and yes, I am holding up both copies because I am very happy that I managed to get both copies. This is the Illumicrate version. It's got different cover, black and black sprayed edges, and this is the Waterstones version which has the blue cover and blue sprayed edges. The Illumicrate naked hardback looks like this, and the Waterstones hardback looks like this. Anyway, this is a very loose Les Mis retelling. I've heard some talk that some people were quite upset that this wasn't really a Les Mis retelling, it was more like there are just the characters in it, which I slightly disagree with. I really like Les Mis as a musical, I like all the songs. I've not actually read the book, so I can't speak to how true to the book or the original story that this retelling is, but I really enjoyed this. I really liked the way that Kester Grant took the different characters and made them her own. I would say that there are definitely elements of the original story in this. You still have Javert hunting down Valjean. It's still set in the backdrop of the French Revolution, and Enjolras is still trying to have a revolution. But other than that, I'd say it is more of a historical fiction. I wouldn't really say fantasy because there's nothing sort of magical about it. I don't know if it counts as fantasy. Ugh. I swear there's always someone at the door when I'm filming. If anyone's interested, this was my copy of The Crow Rider arriving. I don't tend to do hauls, so I'm gonna put them in videos whenever they arrive, because clearly they always arrive when I'm filming. Anyway, back to The Court of Miracles. Basically, the premise of this is that Eponine, who is called Nina in this, becomes part of the underground of France. So there's different guilds that you can get involved in. There's quite a few. There's like the Guild of Letters, who are kind of like, they audit the rest of the guilds. There's the Guild of Thieves, Assassins, you know, etc. Kind of typical ones you'd think you'd see. I'm so fucking out of breath. Fuck. But the main premise is Nina trying to protect Etty, who is Cosette, from the Guild of Flesh, who are, I think, they are kind of forced prostitution, that kind of thing. But it's a very cool story. There's like a love square, but not really. Like, I wouldn't say there's very much actual romance in it. There's a lot of sort of feelings floating around and like tension. But the main character, you can tell she kind of isn't really bothered by that. She's more focused on her goal to save Etty, to protect Etty. Kind of reminds me of Katniss in Hunger Games, where she's got Peter and Gale after her and she's like, guys, there's a fucking war going on, like, I don't care. But that's what Nina is like in this. And usually I don't really like the type of love square or love triangle where like there's just boys falling all over her. I kind of am rooting for Nina. I'm like, yeah, go girl, you fucking get those boys. I don't care, like, go for it. I really enjoyed this anyway, and I ended up giving it 4.5 out of 5 stars. It didn't quite push it to where I wanted it to be. I think it was just missing that little bit of spark that I need for it to be a 5-star, but it was still highly enjoyable, and I'd recommend it to anyone. And I have both copies. Next up we have Gideon the Ninth by Tamsyn Muir. This is my Illumicrate edition that has the black sprayed edges, and my edition of Harrow the Ninth just arrived today actually as well, so I'm going to be getting to Harrow the Ninth this month in August. Gideon the Ninth is basically lesbian necromancers in space, and that's all I knew going into this book. I didn't know anything else. I knew nothing. And it was amazing. I actually read the first 60 or so pages of this way back in October when it first came out, and I actually found the beginning quite slow, but I listened to it on audio, and I highly recommend the audio because the narrator is very good. The way she does the accents for both of Harrow and Gideon, and just kind of the snarky banter that's between them, it just goes really well with an audiobook. And although I would have liked the beginning to be a little bit quicker, I absolutely ate up the rest of this. It's essentially, like I said, lesbian necromancers in space, but kind of with a murder mystery sprinkled in. Gideon is indentured to Harrow the Ninth. There are 9 houses and I think 9 planets. They have like a planet each, I'm pretty sure, in this sort of hierarchy solar system. Obviously Gideon's from the 9th house and Harrow is like in charge of the 9th house. All of the houses get called to the 1st house by the Emperor to go through some trials. The murder mystery part gets sprinkled in there where people start dying and no one knows what's going on. But it has a very cool dynamic between Gideon and Harrow where they basically fucking hate each other. And it's not just, you know, oh, a bit of rivals. Like, they fucking hate each other and they would rip each other's throats out if they could. So despite the slow beginning, I did still give this 5 stars. I was umming and ahhing a bit between 4.5 and 5, and then I just was like, you know what, it is 5, and I cannot wait to read Harrow the Ninth. Next up we have Angel Mage by Garth. Again, this is my Illumicrate version. I'm a sucker for special editions, as you guys will soon come to know on this channel. Now, Garth wrote my favourite fantasy book of all time, which is Sabriel. I've talked about it on this channel, I've raved about it. I'm going to be rereading it this month, hopefully. But Angel Mage is a completely different book. It's a standalone retelling of The Three Musketeers, but with angel magic. So the setting and the premise of this I was really, really invested in, and I really, really liked the magic system. If anything, I would have liked to have seen more of the magic system. You know exactly what the magic system is, but you don't actually get to see it in action that much, other than when you're from the perspective of the villain. And to be honest, the villain I think was my favourite character. I think her name was Lilith or Liliath, but I can't remember any of the others' names, so I think that kind of speaks to that side of it. I really loved the magic system and the way it started, and I did like being introduced to the 4, I think it's 4 musketeers are in it. I did like the introduction to them, but the plot sort of fell short for me. I wasn't really too invested in either the characters or the plot and where it was going. The only person I cared about was the villain. I was just really interested in her motives and what she was gonna do. In the end, I did give this 3.5 stars. I am so pissed off that Goodreads doesn't give you half stars, but I've started using the story graph, which does let you do half stars. But yeah, I listened to this on audio as well. Again, the narrator was really, really good. I enjoyed her narration of all the characters, but unfortunately the story itself did fall a little bit short for me. I would still recommend it for, it's quite an easy read, it's quite a quick read, but it's nothing to write home about. Next up, I read Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno-Garcia. Now, this was the pick for the Space Sirens book club, which I'm a part of. I will leave the link below to our Twitter, and the live show will be on August 8th. But this is quite a short book. It's quite easy to read. I'd say it was very quick to read, but during the middle bit of it, I kind of put it down and wasn't really like excited to pick it back up. But despite the lull in the middle, when I did pick it back up, I did finish it quite quickly after that. So what I knew going into this was that it's set in Mexico, kind of obviously by the title. It's meant to be a horror kind of haunted house story. A lot of people have said it's not that scary, and I do agree with that. I wouldn't say it's scary, it's not horror. I'd say it's a bit creepy, and it very much reminds me of the movie Get Out. I'd highly recommend to watch that film as well. It's one of the best films I've ever seen, one of my favourite films of all time. Our main character, Noemi, gets a letter from her sister. So her sister has gone and married a man kind of out of nowhere, sort of within 3 months of meeting him, and then moved away to the country to his massive manor and in with his family as well. And they haven't really spoken since. But Noemi receives a letter from her that says basically gibberish. There's just all sorts of just writings and scribblings on the page. But it also says, he is trying to poison me. You must come for me, Noemi. You must save me. To me, that really intrigued me, and I really, really enjoyed it. Like I said, there were some slow parts, but I did enjoy the overall premise. And I don't want to say like I predicted everything, but I felt like sometimes elements of the plot were a bit thrown in your face. Like, it wasn't as intriguing as I wanted it to be. I like for the author to assume that I'm clever enough to get sort of the first couple of clues and not keep bashing me in the head with it. However, I did give this 4 out of 5 stars. It was a very, very enjoyable read. There are a lot of trigger warnings, content warnings, which I will probably leave a link to below if I can find a comprehensive list. But yeah, I still would highly recommend this. It's a very quick read and very intriguing. Not my usual genre, which I am quite glad that I'm trying to branch out a bit. I guess it still technically is some kind of fantasy, but not really, I wouldn't say so. Next up we have Forest of Souls by Laurie M. Lee, and this is the Illumicrate version, and I have to show you. Look at that art. Isn't that amazing? I really, really like this. I wouldn't say I was surprised by it because I really liked the premise and I was excited to go in it. I kind of thought it's going to be a 5-star. Our main character Saoirse has been training for many years to try and become the next Queen's royal spy. I'd say that that's only really relevant for the first 5% of the book because all of her plans get thrown off track when some shamans kill her best friend Sango. However, Saoirse accidentally brings Sango back to life and she did not know she had this power, and it turns out she is the first soul guide for any time. I think there was only one ever, and she is the first one since then. Because of this, she gets called to the lair of the Spider King, who lives in basically the Forest of Souls. But the souls are becoming out of control and he needs her help to get them in line again. I really enjoyed the world building in this. I was fully invested in the story and the characters. I liked the setting. I really liked the idea of the schools that they move up in for the royal army. I liked the magic system. I thought it was very straightforward and very easy to understand, but also not too basic as well, as in there were elements, but there are different categories within the elements of like fire wenders, water wenders, that kind of thing. I really liked our main character Saoirse. She was an absolute badass, and not in like the Selena Sardothian way where they keep saying she's really badass but she never shows it. Saoirse is fucking cool. She's so strong and she just beats people because she's just so good at fighting because she's been trained by the current Queen's royal spy. She's just insanely good at fighting, and just the fight scenes in this I really enjoyed. I was just like, fuck yes, like fucking get him. Ultimately, I gave this a 4.5 out of 5 stars. Similar with the Court of Miracles, there was just that one tiny spark missing for me that didn't quite push it to a 5, but it was good enough for me to not just give it a 4. I will say there is no romance in this whatsoever. I thought that there might be some kind of chemistry, or I can't think of any other word other than chemistry, between two different guys and the main character Saoirse, but it was never ever obvious. I felt like I was reading too much into it kind of thing, because I do like to have romance in my stories. I'm a bit of a sucker for it. As much as I only read fantasy, I don't even read the actual romance genre, I do like to have romance in my fantasy. Some people will not care at all. I think that maybe is what dropped it to a 4.5 for me, because I just do like a bit of flirting, even like just anything, but you know, you never know, the main character may be Arrow or Ace, no idea. But yeah, I would highly recommend this. I'm very excited for the sequel, which probably is gonna take ages because this has only just come out, but oh well. Next we have I think my favourite read of this month, and I kind of hate myself for it. So this author I've been hearing loads about all the time, and their books as well. I was always kind of skeptical, and I was just like, yeah, I mean, I don't really fancy it. I can't really be bothered to read their books because it's like white male fantasy, and I was a bit like, oh, it might be a bit of a slog. But this ended up being the favourite read of this month, and I gave it 5 stars, and that is The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson. This book, it just like blew my mind. The first sort of 400 pages, I was very much like, this is sitting at a 4 star. I really like the characters, really like the world building. The magic system is just one of the coolest things I've ever read about in my whole life. But it was sitting at a 4 star, and I was like, this is pretty cool, you know, I'd like to carry on in the next books, but I'm not super excited or anything. And then the last 200 pages happened. So this is my tabbed copy. As you can see, there are a lot of tabs. If you can see at the back here, you can see it's quite a lot of yellow tabs. Yellow is for shock or plot reveal. That's a lot of fucking yellow tabs. Because I love this so much, obviously I had to buy the special editions. I'm sure quite a few people already know what this is about, as Brandon Sanderson and the Mistborn trilogy in general is quite famous. People on Booktube talk about it all the time, or have in the past when it came out, because it is quite old now. There's a lot of Sanderson stans, including Katie from Brightness Katie Reads. But I buddy read this with my friend Maddie. I mean, I guess we kind of buddy read it. She got really ahead of me, and then I caught up, and then she finished it and I finished it the day after, and then we kind of gushed about the ending together. But yeah, I gave this 5 stars. I don't really know how to describe the plot because this was definitely like a setup of a book, but the Dark Lord has already won, and it's just kind of the whole plan that these street urchins and lower class people have to overthrow the final empire. Hopefully me and Maddie will be reading the sequel, The Well of Ascension, together in September as well. Next, I read an arc off NetGalley called Fable by Adrienne Young. I'd heard of Adrienne Young because her book The Sky and the Deep was out, I think, like 2 years ago now, and there was a lot of buzz around that, but I never actually read it. I did want to, but I never actually read it or bought it. But when the publisher had a kind of free-for-all on NetGalley, I kind of requested quite a few things from them, or just you were able to just download them, you didn't have to request. So I got Fable, The Silver Serpents, even though I haven't read The Gilded Wolves yet, and something about a Philosopher's Stone. Fable is about a girl who is left on an island by her father when she is 14. She kind of has to make her way and kind of fight and scrape to stay alive because they're all basically pirates. She wants to get off this island and get back to her father and be like, look, I did it, I got off the island, so can you like take me on your crew now? That's sort of the main premise. She's kind of trying to save up money to get off the island and get passage. I wouldn't say there's like much else to the plot really. That's kind of it. I ended up giving this 3 stars. It was a really, really fast read. I read it all in one day in about 3 to 4 hours. I think it's like 368 pages, around that, something like that. I really, really enjoyed the main character's sort of, I guess, kind of magical ability. She's called a gem sage, which means that she can sort of detect where gems are. And so she's a diver, but they call them dredgers. But she dives down into the seabed and into the coral and everything to find gems and then sell them on. I wasn't too invested in this story. I kind of was just like reading it and just being like, I like the setting and I like the sort of Pirates of the Caribbean vibe, but in the end I didn't care for the romance. I didn't feel like there was any chemistry there. It kind of just happened out of nowhere and there wasn't really any build up, and I like to have a lot of build up and pining and yearning in my romance. But yeah, I'd recommend it for maybe like a readathon read, you know, like there always tends to be a prompt to do with the sea for some reason, or like sea monsters, or just the sea in general. So I definitely recommend it for like a prompt like that if you're kind of behind on your reading goal and you want to get your readathon reads up. It was a fun little story. It wasn't anything to write home about. I'd recommend it if you're feeling something light. Last but not least, we have Kingdom of Souls by Rena Barron. I feel really bad about only giving this 3.5 stars because I listened to it on audio and I found that I just couldn't really concentrate. Even though the narrator was really, really good, I will admit that she has a really good, I think it's Nigerian accent. Someone please correct me on that if I'm wrong, but I think it was Nigerian. I loved the magic system in this. I found that I was really interested in the way that it all worked. I liked sort of the first half of this more than the second half. I found that there were really odd pacing choices. It felt like one of the first climaxes happened really, really early on in the book, and I wasn't sure if I'd accidentally skipped ahead or not. It was just weird. I found there were too many peaks, and it wasn't like gradually going up to a peak. It was like normal peak, and then normal peak. In the end, I just wasn't super invested in the story. There was kind of an overarching plot to do with the Orisha, who are kind of the gods in this world, and I kind of preferred that overarching plot to the lower plot of this book. The book plot was more to do with our main character Ara and her sort of fight with her mother. The premise is that Ara is born to a really, really powerful family of witch doctors, but she does not have any magic at all to her name. This really, really upsets her, and I can see why. I really felt for her when she was just waiting all these years. She's turned 16 and it's been all these years and every other kid has got their magic, and she's just sat there like, well, fuck my drag, I guess. But yeah, the overarching plot I found more interesting than the book plot. And I also, the romance, I wasn't sure how to feel about it. At first, I really, really liked it. I don't normally like friends to lovers, but this I found really sweet, and I did really like their feelings for each other. I believed in it, I was invested in it. But by the end, I was just a bit like, I wasn't like super into it. And there was the trope that I hate, like, oh, someone's died, oh wait, no, they're not dead, or oh, they come back to life. Like, that sort of trope I really, really hate. Like, I just find it oh, it's so frustrating. I'd rather them just die. Like, genuinely would rather them just die, unless it's done really well. And I don't think I've read a book yet where I've enjoyed that trope or found that it's been done well. Coincidentally, please let me know if you think of any books that have done that, or you think that trope has been done well, because I would like to see it. The ending of this book actually had me really, really intrigued for the next one, to do with the overarching plot. And I don't want to give too much away, but it kind of gave me the idea that maybe in the next book, our main character, Ara, might be coerced to the villain side or be torn between the villain side and the good side. So I actually am really excited for the sequel, because that kind of thing I really, really love. I didn't enjoy this as much as I thought I would, but I think that was me. I think that was a personal thing. I would highly recommend this to anyone who loves African folklore, the Orisha, like in Children of Blood and Bone. There's that sort of Orisha in this. The cover's just really nice as well. I don't have the Fairy Loot edition, unfortunately, but I got this in Waterstones for, I think it was like only £6, so I definitely wanted to pick it up, even though I listened to it on audiobook. But yeah, ended up 3.5 stars, but I have high hopes for the next book. If you haven't yet, here is your reminder to like this video and subscribe, because I've nearly hit 150 at this point, and it's been about 5 weeks. So I'm quite proud of that. I'm quite proud of like the slow, sort of steady following I'm getting. So thanks to everyone who watches, and thanks to everyone who comments. Comments are my favourite thing ever. I like replying to them, like seeing what you guys think of my thoughts as well. Thanks for watching. See you in another video. Bye.